Hey, TWT family. It is so good to see you and for you guys to be a part of this podcast yet again. I almost said Tuesday with Tamika, formerly known as Hey, happy Tuesday with Tamika. But as you guys know, there has been a big shift in the podcast, and we are now healing and becoming. And if you've been following me for any amount of time, you know that that has always been a staple of my business, of my practices, and of just who I am as a woman. So when God prompted me to change the name, I said, let's do it. This year has been all about surrendering and expanding. So I surrendered the name that God gave me 6 years ago so that he can expand this brand. And if you've been following me, we just hit 500,000 downloads. I am beyond myself. God is truly doing his big one. And it literally all happens from getting still and listening to the voice of the Lord. I have a question for you guys before we jump into this amazing episode. How many of you guys have ever taken a pause? I see those hands. I see those hands. How many of you guys have ever been comfortable enough to pause for 21 days? That's a little harder than pausing for a minute or 2 minutes or a week, but to literally pausing and sitting before the voice of the Lord or the feet of the Lord to hear his voice and to hear his instructions. I know that in my life, when I have taken that pause for however long God has asked me to do it, amazing things have been birthed. And my guest today knows a lot about taking that pause, surrendering, laying at the feet of God, and watching Him just expand. So I'm going to stop running my mouth and I want to welcome my amazing guest, Michelle, to the podcast. And we share a middle name. So, y'all, well, my middle name is Michelle. Her first name is Michelle. So, you know that this is about to be some good conversation. Hey, sis, you have a minute?
Hey sis, hey Tamika. We can go by M squared. Don't you love it?
Yes, I
Yeah,
love it. Michelle, tell the TWT family a little bit more about yourself.
absolutely. From birth, pretty much just been a serial entrepreneur. I've worked in almost every industry known to man. Currently work in financial services, and I have a nonprofit where we help empower through financial stability. And in addition to that, just launched a or released my memoir that talks about exactly what you said, that pause. It was over my very first 21-day spiritual fast that God showed me why 21 years of trials and tribulations were happening to me and exactly how they were supposed to lead me and guide me to my purpose.
Wow. Gosh, 21 days. Now, was this I want to just jump right in. Tell me a little
Sure.
bit about this fast because there's so many ways to fast. And if you go onto YouTube and just type in fast, you will get hundreds of thousands of videos telling you to do a juice fast or a water fast or away from social media fast. Can you tell us a little bit about how God instructed you to do the fast and then what were the results? Because what I know for sure is anytime we are obedient to God, amazing things come from it.
Absolutely. So um, I was just going through it in life, honestly, and I was doing everything that I knew how to do. And at that time, I thought that fasting was just for like pastors and priests and deacons. And I was thinking, but then I read in the Bible where it says, when you fast, and that just resonated that he expects us all to fast. And so
Mhm.
I looked into it and I was guided to this book by Jensen Franklin on fasting. And so I couldn't afford it. And so a best friend bought it for me and it sat on my shelf, sat on my shelf, sat on my shelf. Well, the morning of my fourth repossession,
Wow.
I seriously was like forced to be grounded. I couldn't go anywhere. I didn't have a car, I couldn't get to work. And I grabbed the book off the shelf. I read it cover to cover, which I've never done before.
Mm,
And I was led to do a 21-day foodless fast. And so I
mhm.
was just allowed water, broth, herbal tea, 100% juice for 21 days. And I had tried to do this several months prior, on and off. And at that time, I couldn't even get to 24 hours. I was like counting down five, four, three. I couldn't. But I just, that was my rock bottom. And I felt like, I need to do this. If I don't get answers after this, then I don't know what the answer is going to be. But at least, like, let me try this one last thing that I hadn't done. And the first 13 days were so powerful. It is so hard to put in words that every day there was a manifestation and there was an answer.
Wow.
And so it just became a part of my life. This has been something that I've been doing now for about 5 years. I typically do at least 2 or 3 fasts a year. In a good year, I can do four. And
Wow.
I love it because it gives me so much clarity, so much guidance, so much direction. It almost like restarts my system, especially when I'm feeling like confused and like just, what do I do next, or like in a fog. And I can always tell when it's coming on because I'm not hungry for anything. Like, I'm
Mm,
eating to survive and not eating for pleasure. And so
wow.
I can always tell when it's time.
That is like the grace of God because listen, I love to eat,
Me
right?
too.
I don't think I've ever just eaten for, survival. I do it for pleasure as well. But God has instructed me. I fast once a week and it is not easy. It's from 6 to 6. I tried my first 3 day fast and I was not successful. I mean, I've done like 6 to 6, 3 days in a row, but I've never done a consecutive amount of time. So you're truly inspiring me because 21 days is not easy. Like that is difficult, but as you said, in that first 13 days, the clarity that comes. I mean, even when I go once a week, I literally get these God downloads and these ideas that like blow my mind. And God's always like, they were already there, but you were so clouded with, what you're consuming, not only physically, but when I do my fast, I'm also like away from social media and away from TV and music and different things because I literally want to be able to hear the voice of the Lord. So, what are some of those manifestations? I definitely want to talk about your business and the book and all of that stuff. But in that 13 days, what were some of the small shifts that happened that you're like, wow, this set me up to where I am today?
Right. So, in the immediacy, I mean, I just started writing down. Um, I was trying to figure out, when did all of this start, and trying to connect the pieces myself, like almost like a puzzle. And so, as I'm writing down this timeline, the first realization, manifestation for me was that all this had been going on for exactly 21 years, and it was revealed over my very first 21-day fast. I about dropped the phone. I'm like, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. This isn't a mistake. Like, this, I'm supposed to be doing this. It's okay, okay. And so then the next day, just like thinking about everything. And in my book, I talk about 5 evictions, 4 repossessions, 3 bankruptcies, a sexual assault, 2 abortions, and $500,000 in debt. And so when
Girl.
I started breaking all those into pieces, while I was going through those things and being denied benefits, I mean, I would run into some of the most flippant people in the world. And,
Mm,
people are like, oh, there's assistance programs out there. And I'm like, yeah, but if you don't have any kids and you're not SSI age and you're not sick and you don't have an addiction and you're not a vet, you're kind of left out unless like they just have extra funding. And so during those times, I always said, you know what, when I get on my feet, I'm going to do something about this because this is just inhumane. We all deserve help and God's grace and mercy, and we all know something to give back. It
mm,
wasn't, whatever your gift is, wasn't given to you just to gatekeep and keep to yourself. So that was always in the back of my mind. But then when I started thinking about it further, I was thinking, okay, so exactly the thing that I want to do, I was put in a position of the people that I want to help, which actually, one, helped me see that gap in our system. And then number two, helped me be more compassionate. Like, who
mm,
would want to talk to somebody who's made it who's never experienced what they're going through. And so I can honestly sit there and say, like, I know exactly what you're going through firsthand.
Mm,
I've been there.
yes.
I've been there.
100%. As you're talking, Michelle, I literally just have like chills going through my body because I'm like, this is such like a God thing because I was just talking to somebody about like the healing and the becoming. And I've heard people say like, how could you be a relationship coach if you have failed marriages? Well, because baby, I know what I did wrong and I know what to do to help you do right.
Right.
You know, how do I know that God's a healer? Because he healed me from the stroke. How do I know that God can provide for you financially? Because like you said, I've had these things. And so for you, first of all, I just want to commend you because what we love over here at Tuesday with Tamika is candid conversation and not like I say, I always tell my clients, we don't edit. In this community, we don't edit and we don't try to make it look pretty and we don't put the filters on it. So the fact that you are so transparent is really refreshing. A lot of people would hide behind the 4 repos and the 5 evictions, but you're standing on your story and you're like, this is how I know how to help you. And this is how I know how to help people that were in the situation that needed the assistance, but because they didn't have X, Y, and Z, they couldn't get it. And so I'm a firm believer that everything that we've been through, nothing's wasted. It's all
No,
used for our glory, for God's glory, right? In our story. So when you started your practice, your financial practice and helping people, did you have to navigate through like shame and guilt, like, oh, imposter syndrome, like I shouldn't be talking about this? And if so, how did you navigate through that?
for sure. Because at the beginning of that career, so I've loved numbers my whole life. And, putting together my own business plans and crunching numbers. I mean, it's just always been a part of me. And I've just always gotten numbers. And the 2 times that I went to school, I went pre med. And so that was a lot of math. And then I went engineering, and that was a lot of math. So
Mhm.
I naturally like math. And I was self taught before I started getting credentials and certifications in the area. But for sure, like when I first entered into working into the industry, I felt like a huge fraud because even though I know these tools and I have these resources and I know what to tell you not to do, I was not living it.
Mm.
And, I'm just thinking, okay, but I know how to tell you what not to do. And I just knew that that wasn't my life. Like it wasn't going to stay there forever. I mean, seasons never last.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure. In the beginning, I was thinking, I'm telling you how to diversify your portfolio, and I don't even have a portfolio, but
Listen,
I know what you should do.
it be like that sometimes, right?
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
how did you navigate that space? Like, did you just keep going or what was like the inner work that you had to do to fight through the narrative that you were telling yourself?
I mean, I knew that everybody just has their own process.
Mhm.
And for me, it was I knew the steps that I needed to take. My first step was opening years of unopened mail, making a spreadsheet, and trying to see what debts I could repay. And actually, it wasn't as intimidating as I had held on to this for years.
Mhm.
Most of the companies had already written off as a bad debt, the debt. It wasn't on my credit report. Like it really wasn't that bad, but I wanted to call and make good on it because, I never meant to not pay anybody. But then, the same budget that I offer to people, like taking my own advice, it was, almost like just taking your own words of wisdom and applying them to yourself because everybody has different finances, everybody has different budgets, different things that they have. Some people have rent, some people have a mortgage. And so I just had to work it for me and see what was going to work for me. But then it's almost like it wasn't even my work. I really can't take any credit for it because then just supernaturally things started happening. Like there was a
Mhm.
credit on a utility bill. And so then I didn't have a bill for a month, which set me up. And even after the 4 repossessions, somehow I was qualified to get this newer car. I don't know how.
But you're
I'm
like,
like,
thank you.
right. And then I even have a picture of when I had all 3 bankruptcies on my credit report and I had a 700 score. And I was just laughing because I didn't have a 700 score before the bankruptcies.
Wow.
And I'm just thinking, like, this is nobody but God. It wasn't supposed to hurt me, it
Mhm.
was supposed to help me so that I could help other people. But how I did it personally isn't, it's not rocket science. You just have to know your numbers. I tell people that all the time. The one thing that connects us is the thing that we don't talk about. Like, how many times will somebody, you're with your girlfriends at lunch and say, "So what's your credit score?"
Right. That's
But
not talked about.
we shouldn't be embarrassed by it. And you know what? Maybe you might learn by what somebody else is doing, and you just need to know your numbers. Like, how much debt are you carrying? What is your credit score? How much interest are you paying on those credit cards? How What are the terms of your loan? Like, do you know your numbers
Mm-hmm.
first?
Mhm. That's really good. You said something about just leaving the mail on, like, just leaving it there, right? And I know there's listeners that probably like looked at the side of the pile of their own mail, right? Because that's very common. I think sometimes there's this fear that if I see it, or if I then I'm responsible for it. But like you said, sometimes it's not even that bad. A couple of I want to say last month or 3 months ago, I had like these letters coming in from the dentist office, and I'm like, what are these? And I just kept pushing them to the side because I'm like, they are sending me like these, and most of the time I open it, it says it's not a bill, so I just like kept leaving them to the side, leaving them to the side. One day I was like, let me sit here and go through this stuff. Do you know they were sending me refund checks? But because I was so afraid, not, I
Right.
don't
What
even
it
know
was.
if it was afraid or like lazy or what it was, but I was just like just negligent to open up the mail. It was some of the checks were like $56, some was like $200, but that was money, right? Like that I was leaving because I was afraid to, or I just didn't open up the mail. So I want to encourage all the listeners, your first faith action step is go through your mail, go look through it and see what it is, and then make arrangements. Michelle, you could probably help us walking through when there is a debt, when there are creditors, what are some steps that people can take to maybe start to eliminate that debt and pay it off?
So with debt, surprisingly, even the IRS, and I work hand in hand with the IRS, um, they are always willing to work with you. The
Mhm,
only time that they start getting nasty is when you avoid them. You're not answering the phone, you're not answering mail, they can't reach you, and then they start sending those demand letters.
mhm,
So, it's not about them replying to your sob story, but it's more about just being honest. Like, look, I really want to pay you. This is what's going on. Can we work something out? And then, in 9 times out of 10, they're willing to work with you, put something on pause, renegotiate it, recalculate it, reconstructed something.
mhm,
And I mean, it's just us in the internal getting over that fear and just facing it. I think that so many of us put our head in the sand and just try to act like it's just not there. And then
mhm.
after that, know your numbers. I mean, there are so many budgets out there. I love, oh gosh, why am I blanking on his name? I feel so bad.
Dave Ramsey?
The Money Makeover. Who wrote
Dave Ramsey?
Dave Ramsey, yes. I love his budget sheet. It's free on his website. But there are so many out there because there's so many, there's left-brained and right-brained people. So, there's a budget out there for you. All you do is fill in the blanks. It's really easy. But you have to know what you have, and you have to know what your bottom lines are, and then you have to know what you owe. And that goes all the way back to knowing what your numbers are. I
Mhm,
mean, for me, all those years of that unopened mail, it was out of true survival because I needed to pay for shelter and transportation and food and utilities. And I couldn't worry about a credit card that was already maxed out anyway.
mhm,
And I was late on payments anyway. And that wasn't gonna keep me alive. So
mhm. You know, when we start looking at budget, one of the things that I do almost every day, at least 3 to 4 times a week, is I open up I have a couple of different bank accounts, because I'm a business owner, but I go through my bank accounts, and I just look and see what is, because a lot of times there are things that I'm like, I have not used this subscription for years, right? And then that could be $10, $20. One of the things I recently did, I am a audio listener. I listen to all my books on audio, and I had like 10 credits. And so I'm like, why am I still paying this $14 a month? So I went and I said, can I pause this? So that
right.
$14 a month, now I can take that and I could put that money towards. And so, in in budgeting, it's not as daunting as it sounds. It's really just a matter of getting started, which is some of the things that you help women and men, I'm sure, folks with.
Yeah.
Where would you say a person should start, like with a budgeting process?
You have to know your numbers. So I mean, first, be honest, write down your income. I would even short it a little bit,
Mhm.
don't. In a dream world, I wish I was making $10,000 a week. I mean, that's great if you want to manifest that, but like, let's be honest about what's actually being deposited
Mhm.
into your bank account and take it by average. I like to do quarterly averages. Like, I live on a kind of quarter system. And
Mm.
so I look at everything like in 3 month increments and then average it.
Do we do gross or net?
Do net, because
Net.
your gross, yeah, like that's after tax. That's what's going to be in your account. And, then just write down what your absolutes are. I really like the 50-30-20
Mm.
rule in budgeting, where
Talk to us about that.
yeah, so 50% goes towards your bottom lines, like your house, your car, utilities, food, insurance, things like that. And then 30%, surprisingly, is for all your wants. But that's the subscriptions, that's, hair, nails, outings, going out to dinner with friends, things like that. And then 20% is the absolute for investing.
Mm.
And that's a whole nother topic because so many people stray from it. Either, I think a lot just from the unknown, but you don't have to have, yeah, a lot of money already to invest. You don't have to invest and put it at risk, because there are risk free, um, that sounds weird, but there are risk-free assets out there.
Mm.
Like, you're not going to lose money in interest. Interest might go down and you might make less, but you're not going to lose money. It's
Mm.
not going to reverse and take your money. So 20% to invest and just kind of start there. Of course, in my absolute, there's tithe in there. You gotta, pay your 10% first. I mean, ever since I
Mm.
started paying 10%, I've never without.
Yes. I mean, it's literally, I have a book here, and I just pulled this out and I'm like, I'm gonna read this again. It's called The Miracle of Tithing.
Okay.
And tithing can be difficult, especially when your income grows. It's like, ooh, I gotta give. But literally, I remember just telling God I could give 2%, like, or I could pay my two, because I believe we pay our tithes and we give an offering. And so I would
Right.
just tell God I could pay 2%. And then I just increased it. As a
Mhm,
single mom, it was difficult. But then
mhm,
now where I'm at, I give way over
mhm.
10%. And I believe that God's well pleased. And literally, when those refund checks came, Michelle, God told me that we're going to step into a season of refund and reward if we're obeying his principles. So
Right.
these are godly principles that I think everyone should live by.
Absolutely, absolutely. But that's where I would start. Know your numbers and then add up your debt too. And like I said, there's a lot of companies that are willing to negotiate. Well, everybody's willing to negotiate with you. You cannot just not answer the phone anymore. But I get it. Like, I was there. My phone was ringing off the hook. Everybody wanted money. I owed everybody money.
Mhm.
And to the point where like my phone would ring and I would have so much anxiety, my heart would start beating because I'm like, I know who that is. I know why they're calling. I don't know what to tell them. I'm just going to ignore it, but
Mhm.
that doesn't do us any good. But then, like I said, once I started calling and trying to work out payment arrangements, um, it wasn't as bad as what I thought it was.
I think Dave Ramsey talks about the snowball
Right.
effect. Snow,
The debt snowball.
okay, can you talk to us a little? Would you agree with that? Would you agree with that's a good way to start eliminating debt? And can you kind of explain that for the listeners?
I like the concept of paying off whatever well, first of all, if there's a whole bunch of itty bitty debts, like if it's $100, $200, get rid of those, because then those are collecting interest for no reason. And you can just pay those. You could like make one a paycheck or one a month, even, like if it's $100 something and you didn't have $100 out of a paycheck, you probably have 25. That's the difference of maybe not going and getting Starbucks for a week or something like that. But I love paying off the smaller ones first, the ones that are definitely attainable, and then look at whatever has the largest interest rate and then tackling that and then paying what you can towards the other one. So you're kind of tackling both at the same time. But that highest interest rate, you want to get rid of that fast because that's doing nothing with, if you have a very high interest rate and say for instance you're making like a $50 payment, check and see what you're paying because that $50 might only be covering interest. And so you're never paying down the principal. And so the debt is never going anywhere.
That's good. That's good to know. Man, you have a wealth of information and I could definitely talk with you for a while. I want to know more about your now companies, your nonprofit, and then also this beautiful book that you have written. Tell us more about that.
Sure. So TechShell is my financial services company, and I started in the financial services industry just in regular tax, consumer tax, and then I went and got credentialed with the IRS, and so now I represent taxpayers before the IRS and get them out of major tax issues like seizures and levies on
We
their
need
property.
oh, y'all need to get to know her. Listen, she's a friend.
Yeah, I am not afraid of them, and I know the law, and I will talk to them for you. So hit me up for real. But I mean, in addition to tax, then I also do accounting, and then I've kind of like merged that into financial consultations. And so that's my first love is I just like to talk to somebody about their whole scenario and let's talk about retirement. Let's talk about your investments. If you have a small business, let's talk about your business and the accounting and what you qualify for as far as tax credits. And then let's look at the personal end and let's see what you qualify for. Let's see what your mortgage is doing. And maybe if you can refinance and change that. So I like to look at the big picture. I'm more of a big picture type of person, but um, all consultations under tax shell are free because I am just happy to get to know you. And I feel bad to charge somebody to talk to them. Like, I'm just like, if I know it, I'm happy to tell you. Definitely
Yeah.
not a gatekeeper. And then with hashtag stability, I've like parlayed that over to hashtag stability. And so I have videos that should be going up any day. I just actually finished a podcast earlier today that was asking about the release date on those, but everything is free. And there are videos on budgeting, there's videos on investing, there's videos on retirement, and then the different types of retirement, the different types of investing. There's even videos for kids. And I'm just trying to figure out how to lock them so that somebody else can't steal my information. But
Yeah.
so,
Are they on YouTube or where do you have
so yeah, so it's on the company website, which is
okay.
hashtag spelled out stability.org. But I'm also going to put them on all the socials as soon as I figure out how to get them locked. And eventually, hashtag stability will offer a grant. So right now, the gift amount to be tax free is 17,000. Of course, that goes up and down with inflation, so we don't know what it's going to be for the year of 2026. But right now, it's 17,000. And so if we look at your situation and we can see that we can get your major debt paid down, if not all of it, most of it, and get you some emergency savings and kind of just get you out of the red, we'll give you that 17,000 to start
Wow.
that journey. But that's a process. Like you have to commit to actually learning about being financial literate because that's where it all starts. And I feel like
Mhm.
that is the foundation is we can't help what we were born into and what communities we were raised in. And if you weren't around it, then there was no one to teach you. And that's
Right.
not your fault. It's okay. I mean, there's enough resources out there now that you can get help anyway. You just have to be honest with yourself and then first and accept that you need help and not be embarrassed by it because
Mhm.
9 times out of 10, like honestly, if you were honest with somebody about your financial situation, we would start a whole nother Me Too movement. You know,
Right, girl,
it's,
listen.
it's smoke and mirrors.
Mhm.
And sometimes people aren't doing as well as what they look.
And you know what, Michelle, that I am so glad that you said that because I am really blessed to sit in rooms with like big players and people that are in the social media realm that are these high influencers. And it ain't all what they ain't got it like that. I've and it's unfortunate. but it's because people are back in the day, the old folks used to say, what they used to say, like living for the Joneses or trying to keep up with the Joneses, right? So there are a lot of people that are living these facade lives, and I would rather, I do believe that I am called to be a millionaire, I'm called to wealth, but I would rather have like holistic success in all areas of my life and not just in my bank account. And I think that with people accessing your services and watching your videos, that could definitely happen. So, TWT family, do not fret. We are going to put all the information for Michelle in the show notes for you guys to, especially for your kids. Like, we didn't have, I always say, I want my ceiling to be my kids' floor. And the
Right.
only way I can do that where they can like stand on the legacy that I'm building is educate them. Like, I could be doing all the things, but if I don't educate them, they will never know it. So the fact that you have videos for kids, I think that that is phenomenal. Tell us more about your book.
Yeah. So then Bluebird, the name of my memoir, kind of brings all that together because, it talks about all the trauma, talks
Mm,
about, the things that people won't tell you. And I wrote majority of this, like 90% out of it, straight out of 21 years of journal entries. And so these are
wow.
things that I never wanted anybody to know. They held me back. No one knew, the real truth behind everything that was going on. I mean, there were times that people knew that I was struggling or I lost a job or something, how, I had to move, but no one knew the real honest issues about what was going on. So I put it all out there in an effort to be transparent and really just to let people know that, like I said, we are all interconnected, whether we like it or not. And I was willing to share my story so that other people, I'm not saying go and yell all your business out to the world like I did, but at least hopefully that would make you feel more comfortable to receiving help and admitting that you need help. But so I kind of combined all of that because I combined all of the financial trauma that I was going through with emotional trauma. Like, we don't even talk about that, like all the depression. And there were a couple times that I was suicidal. And then there were times that, of course, I didn't feel supported by family, friends, community, nobody. So I felt very, very isolated. And I go into all of that. And I talk about my aha moment. And it
Mm,
was when I was talking to who someone that used to be a friend that was like just yelling at me about a personal loan that I owed. And I'm thinking, I'm homeless. Like, I mean, I would love to pay you back, but right now I'm worried about coming up with $50 for my motel room tonight. Like, I
mm.
can't worry about what I owe you. Like, that's not, no, I don't even have $5 in earnest. Like, I really don't, that
Yeah,
$5, is gas money. But,
right.
and being that honest, but, I just remember her saying, there are so many resources out there. And I'm thinking, clearly, you've never been in this situation. And it is extremely inhumane. I don't wish my story on my worst enemy. And I'm not saying that, I went through the worst. It was the worst for me. God never gives us more than we can bear. But I mean, there are people out there that have really death sentence illnesses and things, that they're going through it. I'm not, this is not a comparison. I mean, your trauma is your trauma. But it was at that moment that I was like, no one should ever have to go through this. And there should at least be an organization or somebody out there that is willing to be compassionate about, God forbid you do work and you make $100,000. That doesn't mean that you're paying all your bills.
Right.
Maybe because you weren't educated to do so. Maybe because you don't know how to budget. Maybe, who knows? Maybe because you had a major emergency and that wiped out all of your savings. It's almost like the system believes that, oh, if you work, then you don't need help. And there was one organization that actually told me, it was like for rental assistance at the time, and they told me that they couldn't help me with rental assistance, that I needed to move. And I'm thinking, okay, if I'm getting evicted in a week, how do
How?
I have the money to move? Like, how like, I'm thinking, okay, like, you guys have actually probably never, that's why I'm so excited that I actually got to live through it. I wouldn't want
Yeah.
to do it again. I don't wish it on anybody, but I know the people that I'm helping, I know what you're going through because
Mm,
I've been there. And I'm not gonna come at you like, well, what you should have did,
mm,
because if I would have known to do that, then we wouldn't be here. That's not
yeah.
the answer. The answer is compassion. And so yeah, the book sums kind of all of that up. And I just knew, I said, one day I'm going to do something about this. I didn't know that it was really going to happen. I just, something that I had planned for the future. But then over that fast, and that let me know that that was why I went through all of that. And that was exactly why, because it was what I was purposed to do. And then almost like going to sleep and waking up the next day with a whole new life. It's kind of like how it happened, is how it felt. And I mean, I would be on the phone, like trying to tell my mom. I probably sound like I was talking gibberish
Mhm.
because, like, I couldn't even put it into words
Yeah.
because there weren't any words for it. I mean, it really was just major divine intervention and manifestation. And I mean, I pray that for everybody because there is a way out. Just, don't give up.
Amen. Amen. Man. Ah, one of the pillars of our podcast is living a life to inspire and not impress. And Michelle, you definitely like live up to that pillar because just the fact that you have lived through it and now you're helping other people get through it. So I
Mhm.
commend you for the work that you're doing. TWT family, we are going to have the link to her book, the link to her websites, the link to her socials, all the links for you guys to connect with Michelle in the show notes. Make sure you guys run, don't walk over there. Grab those resources. Now is the time, everyone's talking about this is the year of exposure and people are being exposed, but it's not just the negative things, right? We sometimes need that exposure in our own lives so that we can be everything that God has called us to be. So expose it, put it out there. You ain't gotta be like me and Michelle. Like we tell all of our business. It must be an M-squared thing, right? But just open up the mail, start small, reach out to her, start get the budgeting. There's so many budgeting apps and so many ways that you can start the budget. Start small. Baby steps count. But then one day you could be like us, looking up to a whole new life. But that will never happen if you don't make the first step.
Correct.
T family, this has been an honor. Michelle, this has been an honor. Thank you for spending your Tuesday with us, sharing the secrets. I wish you nothing but uninterrupted godly success. I pray that an overflow of blessings fall into your lap for what you are doing for other people. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much for having me. This
Of
was fun.
course, of course. TWT family, remember to live a life to inspire and not impress. Remember to open up and allow God to fully restore you. Remember to love as if you have never been hurt. Until next week, bye bye.